Hello. Welcome to Season 10 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season, our theme is Because We Have the Microphone. And because we have the microphone, you will listen as we discuss a bunch of movies that we just kind of feel like watching with no rhyme or reason. Think of it as a collection of movies that we've referenced a lot in previous seasons or been curious about for a long time. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the episode. This is another one of those that was a follow-up to a movie I really liked from like the same director in another country. So in my mind, I've always kind of associated it with Peninsula, and then they also both never like had any follow-up or press or anything after the fact.
Yeah. So
I probably should have known what we were getting into, but this movie, The Nightingale, was by the same director of The Babadook, which is a movie we both have enjoyed for a long time.
Yeah, one of my favorite horror movies.
Yeah, and
I mean, the kid in there's a little dick. I mean, I stand by that statement. I said that in the when we did it.
Oh yeah,
but still it's a good one.
Well, that's one reason I liked it so much, is that kid deserved everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, but also another pro of this movie is it was in Australia. And is there anything better?
I don't believe so.
Yeah. No, the only thing better than the country Australia is the people that live in it.
That's true. That's true. And to go on record, we normally have beef with every person from every place.
Yeah.
So that's a huge statement.
Yeah. Yep. So for all the Australian listeners, thank you for gracing us with your virtual presence.
Yeah. Thank you.
But yeah, I going into this had no idea what to expect. I knew
zero idea.
I knew that it was the same director. I knew that it was set in like the 1800s and had been advertised as an Australian Western, but I didn't really know what that meant. And I was just kind of like interested in seeing what happened, because I really liked her directing style in The Babadook. I mean, I feel like that's a very that movie stands out a lot, and it's very well directed, and it's very well constructed as a horror movie. And so just like kind of setting up the suspense of the scenes and the feeling of it all. And so I felt like whatever she ended up doing next was probably going to be at least interesting. And I'd say that this one was, but I don't know that I'd necessarily call it horror. I mean, it was very horrific, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I've said too much already.
Yeah. I'll wait till after. I'll wait till the proper time to talk about it.
All right. Look at you being professional. Oh, yeah. I will do the intro, and then you can do your fun facts, and then we will get into the. I can't say that out loud. To the violent details. We'll just say the violent details. Yeah, okay.
That's good.
In 2018, IFC Films brought us The Nightingale. This Australian Western was written and directed by Jennifer Kent, who also wrote and directed The Babadook. The Nightingale is set in 1825 in Australia and follows the life of an Irish convict who takes off on a hunt for revenge in the Australian bush after a band of soldiers kill her husband and child. Along the way, she learns that she may have more in common with her Aboriginal guide than with any of the English residents in the continent. This movie made about $900,000 at the box office and can currently be streamed on Hulu, which I found out thanks to the app Real Good. Real Good makes your movie watching experience real good.
That's perfect.
What did you learn about this movie?
Well, so other than the obvious, like we kind of touched base on, that this is by the same director as Babadook. The only other, like, so there's a lot of stuff in here about I'm gonna probably butcher her name, but the one who played Claire, her name is, I think, Aisling Fussy. That's how you pronounce it. other than like what they wanted to do with the film was to really kind of like portray the effect of at the end of the day, it was a basically a criminal colony, and how tough stuff was on there. So the way that they treated, specifically, obviously criminals, but and the Aboriginal people and women, that was a huge thing. The actress who played Claire really worked with like a psychologist, and not just to understand like what women go through in situations like that and what keeps them going, but more so, and also because of some of these scenes were extremely graphic and rough, and not just for her, but a lot of the staff, apparently they had psychologists on hand. However, the other and final fact I have is there's a production team member on this that was the Aboriginal consultant. His name was Jim Everett. Anyway, he was talking about, I just thought it was really interesting, but his people lived through 2 ice ages, basically. Like, they were there when the ice melted and the land bridge between Australia and Tasmania went away. Like, that his people were there from that long ago, which
wow.
Evidence has uncovered that one of the latest Tasmanian archaeology dates back to 42,000 years ago. I don't know how that works out, but anyway, so he was one of the original. I just love that history and fact of unfortunately what they had to go through obviously sucked. However, just having someone there that has ancestry all the way back to Ice Age is just crazy to think about. I know that we all basically do. However, just blows my mind. But that's the fact I have.
Very nice.
So I will say this about the film. I had zero expectation on this. Didn't watch a preview. Didn't read if it was, horror. Didn't, just went straight into it with no real knowledge. I think we may have touched base, or I think in the notes next to like the movie list you had was like same director as Babadook or something like that. That's basically all I had. And I was actually extremely happy with it. And I actually think it was more of a horror. I would categorize this as a horror. I can explain.
Okay.
The main, I think it was Lieutenant Dickhead was his name or something like that. The main bad guy.
Yeah.
By far, more of a villain than a lot of the villains that we have in horror films.
True. Yeah, no, I do feel like it was a very horrific movie. I do feel like it had a lot of the things that just make you uncomfortable in your seat, like in your home. Like the movie reaches out from the screen and just like punches you in the gut a lot. And it's gross. And it's just like, I don't feel good about what's happening. I feel the same like dread that the characters are feeling. Like I get a lot of that, and that's stuff that horror movies typically tap into a lot. I think a thing that ruined this one for me a little bit from a horror perspective was the ending, and also there were some parts. I don't know. I could maybe see it as like this movie was trying to accurately portray the horror of life at that time for a lot of people. And I would say it did that very effectively. But it was a better movie than Under the Skin, and it was scarier than Under the Skin. I will give you that. And that one was on a list of horror movies. So maybe we just let it in.
I think for me, it's the thought of, being on this island that long ago, no control over your own destiny in the sense of like,
body.
Body, destiny. I mean, no control over anything, basically. Not only was obviously like the main Hawkins, incredibly bad guy, like just one of the worst.
And so casual about it too, for the most part.
100% psychopath. Yeah. Like, just willing to, obviously rape and murder and killing children. I mean, like, they just checked it off on, like, to make this, the worst in the world. But not only that, but, like, you have, like, Harriet, who, like, Harriet was the lady who, when Claire was walking with her dead baby, to go to, her friends or people that she knows, Harriet was one that was bitching at her, saying, like, you were supposed to be here at sunup, like, just really giving her a business. Like, even that, it's like, I get that she was criminal. It doesn't really go into what was done, but she was a criminal. But honestly, just because you're criminal doesn't mean that you could be, treated that bad. I mean, to extent to what crime you committed,
Well, and I think that they used a lot of that well, in that she had kind of the trifecta, in that she was a convict, she was female, and she was foreign. Like, she wasn't from England, didn't fit into kind of the main thing. And I feel like all those things were like used against her repeatedly. And so she viewed herself as like very different from the English soldiers that were there. But then one thing a scene that really stood out to me was then when she's talking with her guide, and he's like, well, you're just one of the white people. And she's like, well, I'm not like the English. I'm, from somewhere else. And he's like, well, yeah, but you're all white people. And just the way it was an interesting perspective, that after so much had been made of her being like the other or the outsider, to him, she was completely indistinguishable from the other people that were being terrible to him. And so, and honestly, she had probably spent a lot of time thinking of him as like less human than herself.
Oh yeah. I mean, and even the way she treated him when they first got together, I mean, for a huge chunk of that time was, Yeah.
And so that's where I felt like a lot of the movie got away from more of like the horror thing, and it was more kind of like making that point and sort of using their relationship to express a lot of like kind of social commentary type stuff, which I thought was all good and interesting, but in some of those moments it felt much less like a horror movie to me.
I see. What I thought was, like, I think the way that typical movies go is something bad happened. Well, not all movies, but something bad happens to the main character, makes you kind of like them a little bit more because you see what they're going through and all that. And what this did, it really kind of confused you, almost like with Nightcrawler, where they almost get you to kind of like root for Jake Gyllenhaal's character.
Oh yeah.
What this does is, you're feeling bad for her already, but then you see how she even was treating Billy.
Oh yeah.
And you're just like, wait, she's not a saint, and just because you went through what you went through doesn't give you the right to obviously be a racist. And so it was just, honestly, it just seemed like a huge miscommunication between a lot of them. Like, I think if she was just open from the get-go, like, hey, I do plan on going and killing these people, he'd probably still be down. And here's why. Yeah. So it's like, if she just opened up. But, I mean, it's, the other thing I actually liked, too, was that I think one of the reasons what kind of put this over to me liking it was the depiction of, like, of all the, the blood and hurting people. Like, it was just, like, realistic. I feel like this could have easily hid the bloody guts and gore and all that. It could have hid that, And it would have just made it like a drama film that was boring. But because it added that in, I think that's what kind of helped it out. Because it's like, if you're going to say this is an R-rated film, this better by God be an R-rated film.
Well, it's an Australian R. You knew it was going to go hard.
Yeah, it's a hard R, man.
Yeah, no, and to that point, something this movie really tapped into was like the brutality of life with muzzle loaders and knives.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like when it wasn't one shot, one kill, and you hoped to get him the first time, and then you had to go finish him off to face. Like, damn, that scene where she had like the showdown with the guy that had killed the baby was super brutal, and I think especially so because the movie kind of went out of its way to establish him as the one that least deserved to get brutally murdered. Like he at least felt bad about it, whereas the other guys were just like awful.
Just a normal day, yeah.
Yeah, and it just but I had in my notes it tells a lot about this movie that the least terrible guy was the one who only killed a baby. Like,
that's actually a good point.
Like the crimes of the other ones made even that look like somewhat mild. So
that's a very solid point.
But yeah, that scene where she killed him was exceptionally brutal and very. That was the one where you kind of start thinking, am I still really cheering for her, or is this whole thing just a situation I, on the whole, feel awful about?
Right. That's true. Yeah, I think the other thing too that I really enjoyed was just like the character of Billy.
Oh yeah.
Because your introduction to him, like, was one of the more funny scenes where they yell for him and he turns around with an alcohol bottle in his hand and he's just like, "Fuck off!" And it's like, oh, I like him already. Like, this is my type of person here. But just seeing like him kind of transform too, like, the horror of what he went through. Like, he found out he was literally the last one of his tribe, and didn't have the family right before he witnessed, 3 people just get murdered for nothing. It was just it was just like killing them like animals, and it wasn't just the bad guy being the bad guy, Hawkins being the bad guy. It was like the whole world was just kind of fucked up there, and it just makes you thankful to not be alive in that time.
No joke. Yeah, and I think on the whole, there were a lot of things I liked about this one. The first couple minutes reminded me a lot of The Witch, which I would be into.
Yeah.
But just because it was kind of like old school looking, and they were talking a little bit like more true to the time and stuff, and the story was kind of jumping around a lot. Like, you didn't really know a lot of the background or anything of what was happening in the beginning, but it had kind of that like heavy overtone.
Mm-hmm.
But I also thought that in general, just like the movie making across the board was great. Like, it was really beautiful scenery. The shots were set up well. It definitely didn't feel high budget, but it also didn't ever feel like it was held back at all. Like, everything it tried to do, it did really well. Like, there weren't any scenes where they tried to pull off some special effects that they couldn't, and that distracted you. Like, for the 2 hours of this movie, it felt very much like you were in that world, which was a very, like, scary and dangerous world, right? And so that felt, I think that as far as, like, trying to accomplish the artistic vision of it or whatever, it was extremely well done.
Yeah, that's something that, I think she easily pulled off with Babadook. It had that whole feeling of just dark gray. The whole movie was just dark and gray and just, ugly. And I felt like with this one, it had really beautiful scenery, like even in the jungle itself, but like that kind of helped shape the tone, and the image of it. And so that was something I remember we specifically talked about the Babadook was, just setting the tone with the colors and all that. Helped it out, and that was something that she 100% brought here. It seemed like it was raining every single day, almost like just gray and dreary, and and all that. It's still, here's the other thing I think, and it could just be, being that we have, a kid on the way where it was just like, so what happened was I was watching this with Katie, and then we had to pause it, and then I ended up just finishing it on my own. But this was before her husband and baby were murdered, and I was super thankful that we didn't, because with her being pregnant, even more emotion would come, and so it was one of those where I saw what happened and I was like, oh, I'm not even gonna tell her whatever what all goes down, because it was just, I don't know if it's that much more intense because of it or what, but this one just really it gave me chills, almost, or just not good chills, like the bad, like, oh god, I can't believe this is going on,
Yeah, and I think the sexual assault scenes were very intense, like to a level that I'm definitely not used to seeing in a movie. And I think that is a thing that a lot of people would not be able to get past with this one. Mm-hmm. And I, can't really blame them, because that's a very, very violent depiction. But at the same time, like, if the idea is to really pound into your head how brutal this time period was, and like how little power certain people had and how vulnerable that made them to others, like, it definitely made its point. You can't say this movie didn't tell you what it wanted to tell you.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
But then there were also some scenes that were a little, like, as the movie went on, it was almost like she was losing her grip on reality. Mm-hmm. And in some places, the filmmaking sort of like portrayed that, I thought, in a creative way. And even, kind of in the beginning when she gets hit in the face with the rifle, and then she has that like dream or hallucination or memory or whatever of like dancing with her husband at their wedding. But it's just kind of like a little off. And all the way towards the end, where when she got like grazed by that bullet and ran away, and then that night she just kind of like loses it, and she's just like dancing in the dark and having flashbacks. And through most of the movie there was no like background music, but in that scene there was this like super loud discordant string music, and then she ended up screaming and like running into the river and falling down. And just like reading what was happening, like I just did from my notes, that doesn't sound like anything great, but the way that was pulled off, like that whole sequence, I thought really stood out from the rest of the movie and was very like attention grabbing and intense. And that was just even by virtue of like how the sound was used throughout the movie. And so there were a lot of things about it that I feel like, from like a how do I make a good horror movie perspective, directors should watch this. But there were, like I said, there were some things about it I just didn't care for as much, like the ending. Also, I felt personally attacked by Billy's haircut, because that's what mine looked like up until
I was like
Daniel? 2 months ago. Yeah,
you're in a movie. No, I think for me, I think the ending. Don't get me wrong, I'm one of those guys that's, like with the Descent, where
yes,
no one made it out, or should have. In this situation, with how bad, Hawkins and what was his name, start with R? I don't know. The other guy he plays Dewey Crow in Justified, for the record. But anyway, with how bad they were, I was glad, because like seeing that he did get like the promotion, or like was like not in any bad standing with them, just made me so mad. I was so frustrated. I was like, you're kidding me. If they make it out alive, like I'm gonna I'm gonna be mad,
Now, Billy putting on the war paint and going and taking care of business, I liked that a lot. The piece I didn't care for was the part before that, when she went and confronted the guy.
Oh, in front of all of them.
Yeah, but then like didn't really do anything,
right? And
then left, and then they rode a horse to the beach.
See, what it did, though, Daniel, is it helped her recover by confronting her enemy.
But she had already put everything on the line to go get revenge on that enemy.
Right.
So what does she have to go home to now? You know?
Oh, no. I don't know what happened to her. I was actually curious about that.
Yeah.
Also, she could have just killed him a couple times.
Yeah. And that's what was more frustrating to me, is like, after all that...
Right. It's like, what's...
Just gonna stand there and sing at him? Like...
It's like, what
That's
part
my
of, like...
least favorite thing in this movie, is the random acapella breakouts. Like,
It's like, my thing is like, you started out on this journey extremely pissed off and had to like trek through, jungle, water, just rivers, deal with like seeing, all the racist stuff happen, like going on the chain, just all that crazy stuff. And it's like, what made it where you lost that anger, where you didn't want to kill the guy who raped, know? And this isn't saying anything against her. I'm just saying, like, as far as the story goes, really missed it. You're like, she should have at least been able to kill more than one of them in that jungle.
Yeah, like after the whole movie, I wanted to see her like triumph over him.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, I was glad that Billy got to, but that, I don't know.
Something in the belly had to die.
Yeah. I don't know. When the movie ended, I was just like, But through most of the movie, I was kind of on the edge of my seat.
Yeah. Now, I will say this too. There were like times and places that was just like, why is this a thing? Like, it's just waste of time. And if you have a movie that's 2 hours long, like that went through editing. Mm-hmm. And you went from probably like 4 hours down to this or something, that's what they always talk about. Like, you left this. Now, some of the dream sequences, I think, is also what helped it for me be a horror. Like some of those scenes of, dancing with, and all of a sudden Hawkins shows up and she can't stop, move, those were the actual traditional, quote unquote, traditional style, it had this real creepy vibe and stuff, but there was some filler that I was just kind of bored with and just ready to move on.
But I will say, I enjoyed all 2 of those hours looking at Australian scenery.
That's true. It was very beautiful.
Because what else could a guy want out of life? Is there anything better than living in Australia and listening to the Horrific Podcast?
I don't think so. I've never been to Australia. Have you been to Australia?
I don't want to know about it. No, I just look at the numbers. I see people are downloading this over there.
That's true. They're second best after Little Rock, Arkansas, if you look on Libsyn.
Huh. Interesting.
I think that's true. I don't know. Crazy stuff, man.
Ooh, I've said a lot of things about Arkansas that could come back to haunt me.
Well, hey, it sounds like it's working.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, maybe they're hate listening.
That's true, yeah.
That would actually explain a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. All in all, I was happy with it. I would easily watch it. Now, I also, this comes from, like in the movie, The Last of Mohicans, which is also kind of like a tragic story.
I had wanted to ask you if you felt similar vibes.
Yeah, I did.
Because I definitely did. Yeah.
Yeah, I did for sure. And hey, that's totally fine. Like, it just reminded me of it, and I was just like, it was almost like I knew where we were going, and that was a movie that ended pretty rough too. So
yeah,
it was just all kind of, I don't know, hit home almost.
Yeah. But another question: how excited are you for next week?
I am stoked for next week.
I feel like you have mentioned House of a Thousand Corpses on probably 80% of our episodes.
Yeah.
And so the fact that we finally, first of all, how did it take this long? But now we actually get to watch it and do a full episode. And I am quite excited just because I know you will be at the top of your game.
I think so. This is, it's a good time. It's a good time to be alive, being able to talk about this. And that is very true, actually. Like, how have we not done this before?
Yeah. Well, that's what Season 10 is all about.
That's true.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.